I talk a lot about cameras on this channel, but there is one camera I've always only mentioned in passing, despite it being by far my most used camera, the Sony A7R II. Today we're going to talk about this camera's origins, if it's still worth it today over 7 years after release, and why I finally decided I'm going to sell it. The original A7, A7S and A7R from 2013 were interesting, but weren't taken serious by the titans of the industry. These new mirrorless cameras had good sensors, but the usability wasn't great. They were slow, the electronic viewfinders weren't good enough to compete with optical ones, and especially the autofocus was way behind top-of-the-line DSLRs. But somehow, I have absolutely no idea how, but Sony managed to go from their clunky first-generation cameras to a camera that not only ironed out all of the kinks of those previous cameras, but also managed to be class-leading in almost every aspect. High-level executives at Canon and Nikon must have soiled their pants in 2015 when the Sony A7R II launched. Canon really only had one contender, and that was the 5DSR, their flagship high megapixel count DSLR. It did actually have a leg up on the A7R II image quality-wise. It had a 50 megapixel sensor, and that was a chunk higher than the 42 megapixel sensor of the A7R II. So if you like really pixel peeped there was a difference in image quality between these two. But yeah, I mean, in every other aspect, Canon was beat. Featuring the world's first full-frame backside illuminated sensor, the A7R II crushed the low-light capabilities of anything else on the market. Especially compared to other high-resolution cameras. The 5DSR could be pushed to a maximum of ISO 12800 if you really had to, but the A7R II could go to 102,400 and still produce usable results at 51,200 as reviewers reported. The implementation of a stabilized sensor allowed photographers to utilize the high resolution better and even allowed them to take sharp handheld long exposures of half a second or even a second. Furthermore, Sony's first generation autofocus system had developed into a completely different beast in the second generation. The A7R only had 25 contrast AF points, that was it. It was plagued by hunting, it wasn't reliable, it was slow, and the A7R II changed all of that. It introduced a 399 point phase detect system that brought a sensor coverage that was never seen before. The Nikon D810 sensor coverage is shown here. It is a lot smaller than the A7R II's sensor coverage. That autofocus system resembles a turning point, because up until that point, autofocus in mirrorless cameras was considered a sore spot, and pros were picking DSLRs because of better, faster and more reliable autofocus. The A7R II finally managed to turn that around. Not only was it finally able to keep up with DSLRs, it also exceeded their performance and allowed for more features. Photographers could now focus on framing and posing the subject while trusting the camera to get perfectly sharp images. But not only was the A7R II handily beating all competitors in still photography, if you take video into the equation, there barely were any competitors at all. The A7R II came out with the possibility to shoot 4K 100 Mbit with professional features like S-Log 2, and it has the same 4K quality as its sibling, the A7S II, which was built for video. The video out of the A7R II looks phenomenal. And there was another feature that made video on the A7R II really special. Because of the extremely high sensor resolution, you have the ability to shoot in Super 35 crop mode, which just uses a section from the center of the sensor, giving you a 1.5 times crop as you would expect, but you can still shoot full res 4K because there are still more than enough pixels in that cutout. This way you actually get the cleanest image because that section of pixels is then being oversampled to create the 4K image. This crop mode effectively gives you 2 focal lengths for any lens in video without losing any quality. Canon's 5DSR had some video features, but they're barely worth mentioning. In their marketing material they boasted about full HD EOS movies, which is like super exciting. No, seriously, that camera was built for photography. It wasn't built for video. And you know what? It wasn't even built to compete with the A7R II, but reviewers had to use it because there was nothing else to compare it to. It's safe to say the A7R II abruptly set the tone in the camera market, easily beating all competitors and even being significantly smaller and lighter while doing so. I haven't even mentioned that yet. This camera is shockingly small considering the tech in there. The A7R II must have completely blindsided the competition. When this hybrid beast released in 2015, Canon and Nikon probably spent a week picking up jaws that were dropped on the office floors and then proceeded to realize that they were at a minimum 3 years behind Sony in terms of mirrorless development, which was then also confirmed by their release of the EOS R 3 years later. Because of all this, the A7R II was always the peak of camera technology in my mind. Years ago, when I went out to shoot with friends, we would joke about one day owning one. We were kids drooling over the camera equivalent of a Ferrari. In 2018, I was looking to upgrade my entry-level DSLR at the time. It was holding me back because it had really terrible low-light performance, it didn't have any autofocus in video, it didn't have any stabilization or anything, and I don't know, it wasn't great. I looked into purchasing my first mirrorless camera, and to my surprise, the A7R II was expensive, but not unattainably expensive. I had just started my final year of school and didn't have a job yet, so I couldn't really afford it. I don't even remember how, but I somehow managed to scrape together the money, and I met with a super nice seller, who I think gave it to me for a bit cheaper because I was 17 and still a student. For €1,240, I was able to buy the A7R II together with 3 batteries, which was an amazing deal, considering that the guy I bought it from had bought it at release 3 years earlier for €3,700. So that guy had just lost 2/3 of its value in 3 years, and I got the deal of a lifetime, which was amazing for me, and I was so grateful that I was able to buy this camera, because it wasn't just an upgrade, it was my dream camera and a game changer in every possible way, and seriously, that was one of the best purchases I have ever made in my life. Almost every piece of content I have created in the past 4 years was shot on this camera. It opened so many doors for me. By far the majority of what I consider to be the best photos I have taken in my life were taken on the A7R II. Despite this camera being over 7 years old now, it is still insanely good and can keep up with newer cameras in most situations. If the question is the A7R II still worth it in 2023? Yes, it is. And you know what? It will still be in 10 or 20 years. Because cameras don't get worse over time. This camera is still the same beast it was in 2015, and image quality wise, it's already pretty much at the maximum you could ever need. It produces 85 MB uncompressed RAW files. I don't even know that many people that have computers that can comfortably handle the raw images and 4K video files from this camera, or have the hard drive capacity to store them. To be honest, this camera is not only sufficient for 95% of photographers out there, I would even go as far as saying this camera is still overkill for the majority of photographers. The A7R II sensor is still in the top 12 on DxOMark's sensor list, even 7 years after release, tied with many other cameras at a score of 98. And the fact that you can get a camera with one of the world's best sensors for $800 to $900 on the used market, less than the newest iPhone, means that photography truly is in the most approachable state it has ever been in. You could build a whole photography, videography, or YouTube career just with this camera. Okay, now after praising this camera into the heavens, why am I selling it? I bought an A7 IV, one of Sony's newer cameras. Spaß, die Kamera. Bin zufrieden. Despite the A7 IV being many years newer, it's actually not that big of an upgrade, because so many things that have changed in Sony cameras in the past years have just been small generational improvements. Actually, in some sense it's a downgrade. The A7 IV has a 33 megapixel sensor, so significantly less resolution than the A7R II. Upgrading from my Nikon DSLR to the A7R II in 2018 was huge, because it brought so many game-changing improvements. My mentality for upgrading cameras has always been upgrade when a camera holds me back, and I've been doing that for the past 10 years. But to be honest, the A7R II wasn't holding me back at all. Now, of course, if you're a full-time photographer and photography literally is what puts food on the table, then by all means, buy the newest and best tool that gets the job done. There's no reason in using an older camera in that case. It's literally what pays your bills. But if you're a hobbyist or photography is a side gig for you, the A7R II is more than enough. My reasons for upgrading to the A7 IV were more of an accumulation of small things. I went to shoot some wildlife with it a couple of days ago to test the autofocus and video capabilities, and it's really good. The autofocus is definitely faster, the tracking is better, and the addition of 4K 60fps is great. The A7 IV also has some quality of life improvements that make it quicker and more seamless to use. Having a flippy screen and real-time eye autofocus in video helps me make these videos, but it's definitely a luxury, not a must. So did I need the A7 IV? I definitely didn't. I'm not a serious wildlife photographer or anything, but I'm in the very fortunate position that I have a decently paying job next to university and I can spend money on a camera like this. At the end of the day, I'm just a computer science student that funnels all of the money from his programming job into his obsession with taking photographs and making YouTube videos about it. I think you should subscribe to my channel, because if I'm ever in a tax audit, a growing YouTube channel will help me justify why I've spent 3,000 euro on camera gear for YouTube, after I've made less than $100 from YouTube. Am I happy with the upgrade? I definitely am. I really want to give my all on these YouTube videos, and the A7 IV helps me do that by making the process quicker and as seamless as possible. And I'm 100% sure the money I spent was worth it, because I know I will use the crap out of this camera for the next 5+ years. Here's the thing, if you're looking to buy an A7R II and can't tell by now, do it. The amount of camera you are getting for the money is nuts, and I don't think there is anything that comes close in that price range. The A7R II isn't the fastest camera, but it has all of the big modern features and hardware you could need to take the next step in your photography journey. Unless you are someone who really needs the super high quality 10-bit 4K 60fps video, or needs the best possible AF for video eye autofocus, or takes wildlife or sports photography very serious, unless you really want or need those things, there is little reason to spend close to $1,500 more on an A7 IV or even more on an A7R V. Especially because investing that extra money into some quality glass will get you a lot farther. Even if you buy a used A7R II today and want to upgrade in 1 or 2 years, the chance that you can sell the A7R II for pretty much the same that you bought it for is pretty high. Okay, I've talked enough about this camera. All that is left is to say thank you. Thank you A7R II for being a dependable, high-performing workhorse and enabling me to shoot whatever I could dream up. And thank you for watching this video, taking the time to leave a comment or liking it or even subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much for, all of your support. Without you, I couldn't justify or motivate myself to put this ungodly amount of work into these videos that I do. So, seriously, thank you so much. I don't have any sponsors or anything, so any support goes a really long way. And it's like, I don't know, 1:45 AM right now, and I can't seem to nail this outro, so I'm just gonna give up at this point. I really hope you have a good one, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.